Hey there, LRM Universe. Anthony Esteves, the Azorian one, is here, and I am here with the two members of the storyboard team. You're looking at Tom Petborisooth and Corey Powers.
Hello.
These
Hello.
two, there they are. Yeah, these two gentlemen are a part of a team called Storyboard, and they are also part of the creative team behind a web series called PAs,
That's
a
right.
comedy with a little bit of drama, dealing with the lives of PAs working on motion picture sets in Hollywood.
Dramedy.
Dramedy. There you go, right?
Yeah.
So first things first, Tom, Corey, how did you two meet?
Oh, this was many, many moons ago. Actually, I would say that Tom made the first impression on me. We used to work together at a store. I don't know if Tom wasn't ready for the story. And one night we closed the store together, and this was like my first time really hanging out with Tom. And this dude comes out, music blaring on a Bluetooth speaker, and just tries to make this really mundane kind of like, I gotta close tonight, I'm not gonna get home till late. He just tries to make it really, really fun. And that really stuck out to me. I was like, I like this guy's, I like the cut of his jib.
Mm-hmm.
I like what he's trying to do here. And from there, I think we just kind of clicked. Really. Would you say that's about right, Tom?
You know, I'm glad that you got that impression because I remember you're like, I'm just listening to Childish Gambino, leave me alone. That's what I got from it. But then I was like, maybe he's, going through something in life. Yeah, I think for me, that was, one of probably the first few months I had moved down to Los Angeles, and I studied film production and film theory. And so moving down and working at my first, pay the bills job, meeting everyone was just kind of like the first thing I want to do, like, not going to say that Los Angeles is a prison, but the first rule in prison is you make friends. And so I make make friends as quickly as possible and find who your collaborators are. And, people who you jive with will just, you will gravitate towards them and they'll gravitate toward you.
You found your prison friend. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Tom,
you got your back in here, man.
So Tom, you said you studied film. Corey, anything you were doing film wise or trying to get into during that time?
I wouldn't say I took I took film in like high school. Like you know what I mean? Like it was
Like
an elective that I took.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I studied film in the way that I just really enjoyed it since I was young. Like since I was like 13, 14, I was like editing our home family. Like, oh, your Auntie Ruth's birthday's coming up. Can you throw like these pictures together in order? And I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. Let me put it under like Creedence Clearwater and we're good to go.
Yes.
So like I've studied it not in the way that Tom has, like in a professional way, but like in my own life way. And I used to make, stupid sketches with my friends and stuff like that through high school that luckily are not on the internet anywhere. They're all home DVDs. But it, just kind of from there, I've always loved movies. And so I've always just liked taking whatever part I can in them.
Yes. And Tom, you are of the alma mater as Ryan Coogler, correct?
Sure, we can
no
say
big
that.
big shoes to fill. No, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like our
Dave
paths.
Don't forget Dave Thomas. Shout out.
Dave
Yeah.
Thomas.
Yeah, that's a SIG Up alum. That's where the fraternity I'm an alumni of, and I'm still part active in down here in LA.
Nice.
But yeah, I studied film production and film theory at California State University, Sacramento, Sac State, CSUS, whichever you like to call it. And yes, Mr. Ryan Coogler and I did share the same professors, and I was able to see Fruitvale Station when it was screening around after its Sundance win. And I got to be at the screening where Dr. Pomo curated it and asked Ryan Coogler questions. So, our paths crossed. We had a little small modicum of a chit chat. So
you two become friends, start to share your love for film and all things in it. How did Storyboard come about?
I think it was just a collective of conversations, and then Tom and I started like tapping people to oh, what do you got, Tom?
I think the thing was more like, I think you're kind of slowly like, oh, maybe we might do it. But I specifically remember it was, we were all working at the pay the bills job, and we all used to hang out here and there. And maybe there was one or few times that I was like, oh, let's hang out at this place, this person's place for Easter, or let's go do something during the summer.
Yeah.
And there was just one moment where we all gathered at Corey's place, and he said, let's make stuff so we don't lose our minds.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
yeah. That was my backyard.
Yeah.
That was Easter in my backyard. It was like the first time we all really hung out. And it was just, yeah, it was like I mean, the day in and day out of the pay, as Tom says, is the pay the bills job can really grind you down. And I was like, why don't we, we don't have to do anything with it. Let's just make some shit so we don't go totally crazy. Let's flex some muscles that we've got.
And,
So storyboard. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I mean, it kind of came from, I think, at the time Corey was very into Mark Duplass and or like learning more about him, and then there was this talk about soul points, but also talk about how to shoot stuff and the independent filmmaker route. And when I had moved down to Los Angeles, I only had like my two friends who we worked together professionally on other projects like commercials, music videos, but as PAs, and then moving up to coordination and stuff like that, but still wasn't our own. And so the idea that Mark Duplass, that we all kind of lived through was just get your friends, shoot 1 hour a weekend, shoot another hour another weekend, shoot another, and then by the time you know it, you'll have a whole movie. And then that's when we made the first short film I ever shot in LA, which was Bags and Buses.
Yes.
And then it kind of like, to me, this was my first like, okay, can I work with these guys? Can I function with these guys? And the I think the saddest point was how quickly I found out how talented people were in LA, and also how because it's when you
So
move
sad.
from Sacramento to Los Angeles, there's a lot of people who want to make it out and do something. And then there's people who are just talented, and I think there's a lot of people who are just talented. They don't know that they're that talented. But then there's a lot of people who are they think they want to go get something, but they don't. But then that was kind of the thing where it's like, oh wow, like I have to elevate my not, and so it's like I felt like my skill and my willpower were at two different levels, and it's like my skills need to get better, and so I need to just practice as good as the people around me. And that was the big thing with like working with Kevin and Dana, which was like, oh, like these people have studied acting longer than I've ever studied filmmaking, so I need to like really respect their time. And I'm like, Corey, we're gonna like become these collaborators, and we're gonna like push each other in ways where it's like, I've never done this before, and it's like fun. So yeah.
Nice. And you mentioned Bags on Buses. Was that not that was a winner, wasn't it? Didn't it win at a certain festival?
It won at several festivals.
Yeah.
I just looked up at the award because it likes the tower.
It looks down at you.
It needs to be
Yeah.
polished pretty soon, is what he's trying to say.
Well, I'm trying to say like, oh, God, I haven't done anything since. But yeah, it won. It was just a simple short. It was just like, well, take some friends.
It's a great short. It was a great short.
I had barely known Kevin, Dana, and Corey more than like several months, and I had asked Corey to like compose the score for it, and he very generously accepted.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I saw hatred in his eyes.
No, it was no hatred. It was more of like if I looked at myself in the mirror, being like, "You can do this, you son of a bitch." Something about myself that project that I was like, I don't score things.
But and then he had a role in there. But then yeah, like making that, there's no dialogue in it, and I sent it out to a handful of local festivals, and it won screenwriting awards, it won acting award.
I think that took like what, two maybe 3 days to shoot the entire thing.
Probably, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Like after work hours. Like it was just finding the time where, and that's how most of storyboard is just finding the time when you have it and being like, all right, well, we got 3 hours, let's do something we can do in 3 hours, go.
Yeah. I remember the very first few sketches, they were just sketches, and it was just like, let's shoot this thing. And typically it'd be like Kevin Corey would have like the more favored stories or sketches to shoot, and I would just shoot them all. And then PAs happened, and it was just a one a one episode joke, and then it just grew, and
Now it's a cacophony.
characters, and then so it's
That-
wild.
and that's what I want to segue into. You've made these skits where there's a Christmas skit with Corey and Dana, which is fantastic, which has quite a twist in it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites, actually. I
it's-
mean, Tom can back me up on this. Dark humor is, I think, such a beautifully, people are kind of scared of it, but I think it's such a beautiful way to make people laugh, because it's a way, maybe it's just therapeutic for me more than anything. But I think it's a really nice way to just be like, yeah, we're going to be all right. Like, it got dark, but look, we made it. We're cool. All right, cool. We can keep going.
There's that one. There is the newborn babies with Kevin and Mikey.
Yeah.
The Eminem, you guys had the Eminem tryouts.
Mhm.
That one.
Yeah, the Eminem lookalike
The Eminem
audition.
yes.
Yeah.
And then comes this idea you guys have with PAs. Now, how did the idea for PAs come about?
That started with Kevin. Kevin had an idea that he wanted to do a sketch about people on set. A handful of us, not myself, not included in this, had been PAs on certain projects here and there. I mean, I took my experience of being a stagehand, which is like the PAs of the theater world. But that was Kevin's idea initially. He just wanted to do a sketch about that. And then one day at our pay the bills job, Kevin and I just went on this improv rant about Daniel Day-Lewis committing so hard to a character that when he dies, he actually like shits his pants. And that's where it really highbrow stuff, that's kind of where the first sketch came from. And then it, we made it, and Tom shot it, and we put it out, and people received it very well. And it was the first sketch that we had got like, are you guys going to do another one? And we're like, yeah, totally. We totally are going to do another one. And that's like when you're making things, it's a really nice thing to hear, is people, you're like, oh, when are you going to is there another PA sketch coming out? And so, we kind of rode that. And as Tom said, it just became this like powerhouse of what we were doing, and it seemed that people were responding really well to it, and it was really nice, and it's a lot of fun to make, at least on my end of things. So I love it. That's how it started, though, and now it's gone buck wild. And the nice thing about it too is that you talk about the dramedy, or I'd say it's comedy heavy, so the comma series, and that stemmed from a place of me and Tom wanting to make sure that storyboard as a whole, or a channel, isn't necessarily just, it doesn't have to be comedy all the time. It could be what we primarily do, but there are rooms for things like Bags and Buses, or
Variety.
Half a Glass and stuff like that. So that's kind of seeped into that as well.
I mean, also, it's just like I found in Los Angeles that I have a lot of friends who are wonderful at improv, and I would be always at these like events, and improv games would happen, and bits would happen, and riffs would happen, and then I'd be like, yeah, I get it. But then I wouldn't laugh, and it was really weird, and I always found like maybe I'm not a funny person, but I can take their jokes very seriously. And so that was kind of like the thing that I kind of found my place in, of, the jokes and the comedy and the relationships will kind of take place within this world of PAs, of the characters that we're seeing. And, I always try to lend any type of consultation of like my experiences on set, of the hurry up and wait, and the weird, antics of what happens when, behind the cameras, what do the PAs do when all the actors are there and everything's shooting and everything's going according to plan? Like, who's off running to get crafty for the second time?
Tom is our on-set reference book of like, would this happen? He's like, kinda. It would more be like this, and be like, okay, well, let's change it to make sure it's as accurate as we possibly can do it.
I've never experienced anyone, defecating on a set in order to get, SAG
Vouchers.
But that's kind of thing where it's like all the back end stuff that's happening is where the imagination can kind of grow. But then like just making sure all the, names for everything, and call times, 80 packets, all these kind of small things that are just like, oh, okay, they did pay attention.
Mhm.
It just makes sure that the world feels livable.
So they were Nolan, and you were the theoretical physicists trying to make sure their story fits in with what would actually happen. Is that what's going on there?
More like we were the idiots on set, and he was Nolan trying to.
There
make
you
sure
go.
that the story still comes through. We were,
By the way, who decided the Lincoln name? Because Daniel Day-Lewis is such a dramatic,
yes.
serious actor, and he's plays this part in this comedy series you guys are creating.
Yeah. And I mean, for those of you, spoiler alert, Lincoln doesn't die in the movie. So I don't know, like, it just got funnier to us that he commits so hard that he made Spielberg shoot the scene where Lincoln dies so that he could end the character and be back to Daniel Day-Lewis again. I don't know. We like playing with that. Like Tom said, if there's a ounce of like someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, some realism that we can kind of pull on and add it to that scene to just ground it a bit, because like, thank God for Tom, because we really can get heightened to a point where you're like, this isn't going to work anymore. we need to refer to like Tom, because he'll be like, look guys, do we want to shoot this scene or do we want to like riff all day? And we're like, no, we want to shoot the scene.
Well, I mean, that's the
Right,
thing
Tom.
too, where it's like Daniel Day-Lewis, it makes sense. Like, it doesn't make sense if like, we had Mark Wahlberg doing that. Like, it's just not within that joke. But then that's where the kind of genius comes down into the writing room with, where kind of like the groundworks of the bones and how the skeleton of the episode plays out with Kevin and Corey and everyone else in the writer's room, of knowing what the joke kind of starts out with. Like Mark Wahlberg's joke is probably going to be about like, he took so much protein that like he has to have two trailers for it or something like that.
I mean, that's where Tom's strength comes in for us, because these did start as sketches and he gave us the blueprint for storytelling. Like without Tom, PAs wouldn't have a 3-act structure in the later seasons. We didn't know to think of that. We were really good at writing these situations and heightening them to a point that we could laugh about, but the relationship side of stuff, we were simply pulling from other TV shows we loved. And it was Tom who came in, and I have this giant whiteboard on this is the boardroom, as we call it. And he's the one who drew the lines, and he's like, all right, we're doing this. If we're going to do these episodes, this is how we're going to do it. And he's the reason that PAs has structure moving forward. Him and Kevin really are the two that have the most experience, where Neil, Mikey and I are kind of like the brain trust of silly.
Well, the funny thing is that how the writer's room kind of works, typically you think like, here's a showrunner, here's the idea of where the episodes go. And then you have the staff writers who are like, okay, cool, this episode, this has to be achieved. So we're going to do these with these characters. We wanted to fulfill these arcs. And then you have the, writer's assistant who's just jotting down the notes. There is no role like that. Like, everyone is the writer's assistant at least once. Someone's just taking down all the notes and writing down all the jokes. Someone's on the board being like, okay, what arcs are being fulfilled? Someone is saying like, hey, I think that these arcs are the ones that need to be fulfilled. So it's very interesting, especially the way we kind of started how storyboard is and how that kind of evolved and grew and matured into the forms and functions of how the story goes, because directors have nothing to direct, producers have nothing to produce, and cinematographers have nothing to shoot if there's no story that's being written. So it's like that's where it all starts out. So
yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
You've all created this series that when you initially watch this, I'm watching the series and I'm like, this seems so professional the way it's done. You all play off each other so well. I'm watching it and I see something that's caliber of a Superstore on NBC, or a comedy series that's going a non-live audience comedy series, because I think we're kind of tired of the live audience series. But the quality of it is there and it's so good, and you're laughing through this first half of this season, and with things with Corey dating Rachel McAdams, Kevin giving a certain amount of percentage at work, the dynamic, how everyone just hates Neil, and
for no reason. And
for no reason.
If I could touch on a few of those, like the quality of it, I mean, it stemmed from all of us really striving for that. Like that was something we didn't want to hit the ground. Like as much as we want to get, shoot the 3 hours we can, we also want to treat it like we're shooting a TV show. And a lot of us brought knowledge from different sectors for that. And, we tapped a lot of our friends who we thought were really talented as well. We have Kevin Shiramizu and Jake Goldman who helped us out with the early stuff. We have the Hall brothers who we worked with as well at the show, at our day job, and to help on the show and direct some episodes. And so it's really about, like, for me at least, calling in the people that I think are way more talented than me to come in and help with this thing. Cause I'm like, I want to brush up on you guys and see it's the reason I tapped like Tom and Kevin and Mikey and Neil in the first place, is I was like, I want to learn from all y'all's, because you look like you know what you're doing. And then a lot of those jokes just came from reality. Like since I was like 14, I've been in love with Rachel McAdams. Like that's star crush. And I was like, well, let's just write it in the show then. Or the thing with Neil comes from him just being like the nicest out of all of us. And
that's
so
what makes
really,
it so funny. He's the nicest guy, and you all just hate him, and it's fantastic.
It's the joke. That's really a joke for us, because like he really, out of the group, is really the nicest person behind scenes, and it's just like, to us, really funny to have him do all these nice things and be like, "You shut up, Neil, you're a dick," and like, really, it's everyone. And we pull from shows that we love too. Like for me, Always Sunny is like the holy grail.
Oh yeah, that's definitely
shows. And it's just a show about terrible people, and we kind of play on that with PAs a little bit, where they're all terrible. But the one thing we have, I think, not over Always Sunny, that differentiates us from Always Sunny, is that at the core of it all, these folks in this show really love each other. And they'll be the one, if someone else were to call Neil an idiot, be like, "Hey, he's our idiot. Get the fuck out of here." Like, you know what I mean? So,
and it's those moments where the close up of Mikey saying "Shut up, Neil" right into Neil's face, and I mean, just imagining the amount of takes that took, because I know I'm pretty good at keeping a straight face, but I would crack the second Mikey gets in my face and says "Shut up."
Surprisingly few.
Really?
You have quite. It's surprising what gets us to laugh. And Tom can probably expound on this a little bit more, but Mikey is one of those beautifully frustrating people to work with, because we'll spend weeks and weeks in a writing room, and then on set he improv'd. If you watch episode 4, he has this bit about waterfall on me. Like,
yes,
that's improvised, and it threw the script out the window. And it's Tom wonderfully implemented this rule on set, where it's like, look, can we just get 2 on script, and then you go do whatever you want. Found this balance.
No, I mean, I think one of the worst offenders of it was the season finale, and it was just are you raised by a NASCAR? And that's the tough thing, where sometimes it's just so good, and like I think Corey and I will both have the script in hand, we'll just like throw it on the ground. It's like, well, I guess we're going with that line now.
In episode 7, there's a on our Facebook page, there's a clip I put together of all the different lines he improv'd in episode 7. I think the one that made it in, he says like, "Oh, one of those tiny cars from Chevron." Like they say, what's something an actor always wants?
Yes.
And he said like a Game Boy Color, a Skip It, a Smoky Egg Ball Pod Collection. Like these are all things like
a Skip It.
And it's us laughing every time. That's what I think Mikey's the one who makes us laugh the most, because I don't know where his brain goes to get these things.
Yeah. If there's one thing that Mikey highly contributes in, is that he is like kind of like Andy Samberg, very, very strict about his comedy into a weird, like obsessive way, where like for me in filmmaking, it's like just make the best thing you've ever made. And like, that's kind of like how the PA's episodes went from like, here's one joke to here are characters and here where they are, here where they come. It's, to your point of like saying like, the quality, and I'm, humbled that you're saying like how much you've enjoyed it and received it. But I think Corey can agree with this, and it's just that every episode we do and shoot and write is an opportunity for us to make it better. And that's always the goal, is just like, if we make something that's just like, Watchmen on HBO in one episode, and then that's as good as we're gonna get, it's like the next episode has to be better. Like that's just the weird obsessive way we're gonna be about it.
And I think that's what is so great about the series, that each episode one-ups the one before it. We get introduced. We get introduced to these main PAs, and then we get Dana, the assistant director, second assistant director, correct?
Second AD.
Second AD.
she comes in, and I've seen Dana in like Instagram interviews and chats she's had. Sweetest woman you're ever going to see
Yeah.
chat. So
Yeah.
when you see her become Dana, the PA, the second AD, holy shit.
Yeah. She's
She just digs into all of them. The cursing is flying. She controls. You can easily see she's the boss of the PAs.
I mean, that's why we wrote a whole episode around, her eventually, because we were just like, this is solid gold. I mean,
Mhm.
Dana is probably one of the, I mean, I'm saying this because I'm her husband, but she's one of the most talented actresses I know personally. And so, when we first started Storyboard, as at the time we were just we weren't even engaged yet, but we had been together for 4 or 5 years at that point, and so. I wanted to be like, oh, well, this is going to, I don't want to bother her with my stupid, sketch comedy group guys and, whatever. But she would always be in the meetings in the living room and like contributing and like giving feedback while I was editing. And so it eventually evolved into this thing where it was like, would you be in an episode? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to be in an episode. And I was like, okay, I didn't want to bother you with the stupid poop jokes and, stuff like that. But she had such a great time working on stuff like Bags and Buses and was in a few of our other sketches. And so, putting her in as a season regular was a no-brainer at some point.
Well, I mean, the one thing I really like what you mentioned, Anthony, it's weird to call you Anthony and not Esteves. But it's Dana is a very, very sweet human being, outside of the PA's universe, breaking the universe now we're mentioning about it.
Breaking the fourth wall. There we go.
I think, I can't pin down whose idea was it, but I remember distinctly being in the room being like, that's a very good idea. And it was, like she gets introduced as, the second AD. And if anyone knows the film industry, the first AD is the one who sets the pace of the day. If you don't make your days, it's because either the cast or the AD have a lot of friction or something's not going right. But the second AD is the one that kind of has to just be the one that closes all the gaps for the first AD. And so these slacker PAs, obviously are always going to be in conflict with her. But it was really important I'm just going to say Corey and Kevin, that she wasn't one-dimensional in that sense, because that was something that kind of became like not daunting. It was something we always knew, but all the characters had to be humans. They couldn't be just characters. And Dana's character just being like this hard ass wasn't going to fly for long. It was just going to be annoying and naggy and whiny, even though in reality she had all the right to be, because the PAs are being a bunch of idiots. But in order to make sure that every character felt human, there was a lot in time invested into her character as well as everyone else. So it was a really interesting addition.
And I think getting her on the show gives us validity as a sketch. Before it was just a bunch of dudes, and eventually we had to be like, well, why are they never getting in trouble? And we're like, well, let's get them in trouble.
Time to get them in trouble.
And so bringing her on was probably one of the better things we've done as a group.
And then the series, I mean, up to that point, it's hilarious comedy. There's the rap party, which is fantastic. And then
that's
comes
probably my favorite episode.
The rap party. Yes.
That was a rough day.
That was a night. That was a night. I bought these lights. I remember I bought these fancy lights for our shoot, never got used. And Tom would just keep coming up to me through the shoot and be like, it's a good purchase, man.
It was a good purchase, man.
They'll get used.
Because, as a director, it's important to make sure everyone's having a good time, right? Or else no one wants to do it. And then when you get asked to do another episode and everyone hated the last one, like doing the last one, then what's the point? But the thing that I would say is the roughest night about episode 7 was it was a 13-hour or 16-hour rolling day.
Yeah.
And we had to have sections of extras or section of background coming in. Like, okay, so this section's going to come in.
I don't know how Tom did this, because he worked out like this rotating shift of extras and had everyone get coverage. I don't understand.
And we had to shoot all really weird orders, and I was just like, my brain.
Yeah. Like one of the first things we shot. I mean, we shot the opening first, and then the second thing we shot was the end of the episode. And it was like, and then we got to dismiss the extras, and then we had to keep some of them for some insert shots. And then they go, and then we did the rest of the beginning of the episode, and it was like in one night, and we're just like, where are we right now? What are we doing? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it came off beautifully because that episode, just everything from Kevin finding the alcohol to Dana warning you guys to the over dramatization of trying to find him. The jeans are found outside with the girl who's knocked over. It's so well done. And then comes episode 8, where PAs takes a turn, where the drama comes in and it focuses entirely on Dana. She's the main character of that episode. And it just, at that point, it's like, wow, you guys went from, slapstick TVMA humor, and then you get to this point where this has a heart to it. There's a dramatic heart to this story where we not only relate to them on a funny comedic level, now we're relating to this character on a more emotional, dramatic level, and it was so beautifully executed.
I can 100% accredit that. Not 100%, but we're all a group effort. But I will say Corey has a deep love and appreciation for Scrubs.
Yeah.
And so that's the balance that he likes to play with the episodes, is that the funny moments are going to be really funny because you're going to care about the characters, but then also the really, heartfelt moments are going to hit you that much harder because it's kind of like you didn't realize how deep the water goes. But obviously Corey can probably elaborate a little bit more.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that's really what it was, is it eventually came to this point where if we're going to do this as a series, I would love to, Tom touched on it. We kind of liked exploring this idea of just making them more than these one-dimensional characters. I'm a big fan of Workaholics. I love that show, but there's no development in those characters ever. And so that I wanted to kind of mix that kind of humor we were doing with exactly what Tom said. Like, Scrubs is probably one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and it's probably some of the most impactful TV I've ever watched. And so I at an early age, how old was I when I was watching that? Probably like 15. I started watching 14, 15 when I started watching, I think 2005, I think. So 2016, 15 or 16. And it just hit me at the right time and the right age where I was like, I didn't know you could do this. Like, some of those episodes are burned and I can see them, like when I close my eyes, like moments in those shows of, so yeah, it was this idea to do that and also get to explore Dana as a character as well. A lot of what we do in this show, as far as the comedy goes and stuff like that, is just really making stuff we want to see. For instance, in the series finale, there's a whole moment between Kevin and Mikey that seems really intense and in depth, and really it's a shot for shot, line for line recreation from season 2 of Stranger Things of Barb and not Barb, of what are the two older siblings that are in love?
It's
hair.
like,
we didn't kill Barb. It's shot for shot, line for line, that scene, and that's for us. No one's gonna get that. No one's gonna understand that it's Nancy and what's his name?
And Steve Harrington.
Steve Harrington. Nancy and Sarah, when she's drunk at the party, being like we're in love, like we're friends, like we're dying. But that's what this show is, just filled with little things kind of for us, because at the very least, if no one else is watching, like, let's make ourselves laugh, or let's make ourselves feel something.
I will have to just put in the credit right there to say, like, I was the assistant writer that day, and then we're writing all the beats and all that stuff, and then I just wrote that part out, and I was just like, who cares? And then so when we were rereading it, then I made sure that they said those lines. Like, what is this, Tom? Then I was like, just keep reading it. And then Stranger Things was really popular at the time, but it was really great that people picked up and were like, that's frustrating.
My sister called it. She's like, I can't believe you guys reshot that scene from Stranger Things. I was like, hey, we did it.
It was wild.
But yeah, that's that whole episode. And I mean, not to get like super, super deep or anything, but like that and the following episode, there is some bits of like us also working through our own issues in there.
The funeral scene.
Yeah, the sitting Shiva, and like it's it's a nice way to kind of put yourself out there and show a little bit of what you're going through. And I won't get into any specifics on anything, but like it was really nice to put some of that on paper and just be like, cool, that's out there now. And I hope some people know that, A, we relate, and B, you're not alone in feeling that, because here's this character, especially someone like Mikey, who's really good at putting on that funny face, being like, well, no, I'm a person too.
So it was so beautifully executed. You guys ended that first season so well done. As a professional wrestling fan who knows how to sell a hit, Corey, I commend you on how well you can do some physical comedy, both with the door and the can repeatedly in the nose.
That started just because I grew up loving Jim Carrey. And I just loved taking hits. And I thought I was going to be a stuntman when I was 7. And I used to jump off my bunk bed, and like it had this ladder that would stick out, and I would like climb. I knew how to like move it so it would collapse on itself, and I would fall down the ladder. And it's really kind of just me living out a childhood dream. And I had a lot of fun. I got to make those. Neil hits me with a lint roller, and what that really is a soft dog toy that I wrapped in gaff tape, so I could get hit with it over and over.
So well done.
But it's a lot, that's another thing that you just throw in there because I think it's funny, and I love doing that stuff. So I was like, how many times can Corey get beat up without anyone caring? And then Mikey gets hurt once, and everyone's like, oh my God, Mikey!
Oh, Mikey. Yeah, I feel you. I understand you on that level. I won't comment on my previous backyard wrestling career. We'll leave that somewhere else. So
we'll talk about that off camera.
Off camera, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So you got the first season done.
Yes.
It ends in a cliffhanger. What approach does Storyboard have for the second season of PA? So I don't give any spoilers because I want people to go see the entire first season. So I don't want to give away too much. But what do you think the angles, themes you're going for with season 2?
Tom, you want me to go first? You want to go first?
Go ahead.
I can try to navigate this the best I can.
Jump
in when you feel like you need. I can tell you that from a writing standpoint, we'll start there, that it was really important to us to, like Tom mentioned, we try to push ourselves every time we do something new. And since the last season was really a kind of, we stumbled into it. It was a happy accident where we're like, this is a sketch. Oh, now it's a show. We were writing them and recording them within like 2 weeks. Like it was like written it. All right, we're shooting this. All right, now I guess we got to write another episode now.
Very hand to mouth.
So yeah, so it was a lot of like these through lines of characters really came, by chance. And we were very lucky that some things worked out. And we would kind of read into our own writing and be like, oh, did we mean to infer that? No, but let's do it anyway. It's going to work. And so this next season, we kind of sat down and we wrote out the entire second season before unfortunately with COVID, everything kind of got put on hold. But before we were going to shoot anything, we said, you know what, we're going to write front to back everyone's arcs. And Tom I would say Tom and Kevin really brought in a lot of information on writing for TV and movies and making sure these characters hit these certain arcs and why you want to do certain things in storytelling that, I had seen on TV, but never studied myself. And so like, we wanted to take these characters on a journey. And so with that, pushing ourselves not only to write the entire season out, but now we've written it so every episode is a full-length TV show. It's a 22-minute episode. It's not going to be 10, it's going to be 6. You're not quite getting as much, but you're getting more at the same time, right? You're not getting, the count is lower, but you're getting a lot more content.
And we promise we're not Game of Thronesing it. We have plans to do several seasons.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the high aspiration. But this, like Corey said, is, the first season you find yourself, second season's like when you really start hitting and cooking with the oil. You're like, oh yeah, this is what the show is. And, to answer a little bit of like the angles and themes, I think, again, it started as a joke and then became a story. And then here it has like the best of both worlds where like the jokes become the relationship builders, but it's because the framework is because of the story that's happening. So that being said, like every episode is going to start out with like, you're going to have this, from the beginning of like, okay, I know what this episode's about. And then the enjoyment and the joys and jokes that happen along the way will just kind of, feed you as you're experiencing these characters in a fully fleshed out way.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to put it. And I won't spoil anything for this first season, but a lot of the characters are kind of left in this up in the air situation, don't know where they're going to land. And we really got to play with that in this next season, and we got to explore a few of the characters we didn't get to explore in the first season. Like we got a big handful of what Dana and Mikey are like behind the scenes, but we don't really know Kevin, Neil, or Corey as well as we do the two of them. and we get to play with that a little bit more as well. So I think the second season, I'm really, really proud of it, what we've written so far, and I'm excited to get down to it and get, hope, knocking on wood, that we can get filming pretty soon here.
Well, as a PA's fanboy, I am excited to hear about season 2. I'm excited to see season 2 happen. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
maybe
rewatch.
a familiar face will show up in season 2.
I
Who
mean, we never
knows?
know. It could happen. Who knows?
Some
We'll see.
backyard wrestling.
Maybe
Yeah.
it could happen. LRM Universe, if you haven't watched it yet, check out the very first season of PAs. Gentlemen, where can they find it?
wearestoryboard.com, and that's BORED.
It's like
Simple as
you're bored.
that.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah,
you
like-
won't be.
'Cause you
Yeah.
won't-
That's
Why have
Dana.
we never used that before?
That's Dana.
Is that Dana? I
He
don't
did
remember
that.
that. It's been so long.
Yeah.
This COVID thing is just living in this cave.
Yeah.
So there you are. wearestoryboard.com,
Yeah.
the home of PAs, as well as everything else these creative talents have put together. Go check out their work. Check out season 1 of PAs. Once you're done checking it out, share it to everyone, because there's a lot of talent that people don't know about. And I'm talking to 2 representatives of this great talent organization that exists. And I hope you, the LRM universe, will take in what they have created for you. All right. Tom, Corey, thank you so much for joining.
Thank
me.
you for having us, man. This
Thank
is
you.
wonderful.
Not a problem at all. Thank you again. And we'll have you again in the future for whatever else you guys create.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Love it.
Hope you enjoyed the show, LRM Universe. Take care.